Hello, you're listening to Storytelling Saga, the podcast that shares stories. I'm your host, Allie, and this week I'm discussing Cinderella, the 1950 Disney animated movie. I have to specify specifically which version of Cinderella I'm discussing because obviously there are literally thousands of different versions of this tale. And it's unclear even where exactly it originated from because the folktale dates back thousands of years, and there are different versions from other countries with different titles. So, not exactly the same character, but the structure of the story is similar in that all of them are about overcoming oppression. So that timeless theme. And of course, timeless tales, that's why there are so many different adaptations of it. And of course, with Cinderella, now there are so many modern remakes as well. There was Cinderella, the 2015 live action remake, which I haven't seen, but apparently it was really good. And then actually there's another live action remake coming out later this year starring Camila Cabello as Cinderella and Idina Menzel as the evil stepmother and Billy Porter as the fairy godparent. But Cinderella itself, the folktale, to go back to that, the movie is based on Cinderella or the Little Glass Slipper by Charles Perrault, which was published back in 1697. And another notable version of Cinderella is by the Brothers Grimm, published in 1812. And with that story, I specifically remember the disturbing detail towards the end in which one of the stepsisters cuts off her big toe to try to fit into the glass slipper, and the other she cuts off her heel to fit into it. So very dark and disturbing, as is customary of the Brothers Grimm. But early tellings of Cinderella date back to BC. There's one from China, for instance, with a different title. There's one from Italy, one from France, one from Egypt. So it's interesting how this story has been told for thousands of years. And of course, with this version, you got the amazing music, the songs, and of course, customary to Disney that you have to have your lovable animal sidekicks and also the evil animal in this case with Lucifer. I kind of forgot how big of a role Lucifer has in this movie, and Lucifer's just a total jerk. Like, oh my god, I can't stand that cat. Terrible. Ugh. And also the stepsister, like, they're such brats, honestly. And of course, the evil stepmother, who really is just pure evil. And there's a lot of similarities to, since this movie kicked off Disney's Silver Age era of movies. So there are similarities to movies prior to it. For instance, of course, the first feature animated film, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, with that, what's that character's name? The witch lady. I don't even know her name now. I'm blanking on that. But, you know, the witch that's jealous of Snow White, who's the fairest of them all, whatever, that lady. And then, you know, like Maleficent in Sleeping Beauty, and even actually kind of a little bit the queen in, like, the Queen of Hearts in Alice in Wonderland. So there's similarities with these characters. And really just stems from they all are jealous of Cinderella. And I forgot actually that this movie does explain the original tale in which Cinderella's father, when her mother passed, he felt she needed a mother, so then he remarried and he marries Lady Tremaine, and then he gets sick and passes away, and so then her true nature comes out, and then they just tell us that Cinderella is abused and humiliated, and it's just so terrible and awful, obviously. But despite all of that, her kind nature remains, her just kind, true, gentle nature, and that she has her hope that she just never gives up on her dreams. And of course, singing the classic, beautiful, "A dream is a wish your heart makes." That's such a lovely song. And I know people who actually used part of that song, like lyrics of it, in their high school yearbook, actually, which is cute. But, you know, like, because the lyrics really do resonate. No matter how your heart is grieving, if you keep on believing, the dream that you wish will come true. So that's just such a lovely sentiment, and it really is true to never, ever, ever give up, as we always know. You know, it's always a good reminder. And it's just so sweet, like, when she sings and all of the animals are entranced by her. It's so cute, you know, the birdies and the mice, so adorable. As a kid, watching this movie a lot as a kid, I always loved the little mice and, like, their little outfits. how the girl mice have little bows on their tails. I found that adorable. And then I forgot the mouse, that his name is Jack. I forgot that. But then, of course, Gus Gus, too, the new mouse, the little, he's so cute. It's so adorable that she makes clothes for them. And then, it made me think, though, that they have all of these mice in the house and that she's so lonely she became friends with these mice. It's just so sad to think about. But then it's so sweet knowing that they all love Cinderella, these mice and these birds, how she's so kind and sweet to them. And again, similar to Snow White with all of her little animal creature friends. So adorable, in Snow White with the deer and the squirrels and, all of the little woodland creatures. So with this, it's just so adorable how the mice and the birdies, everyone looks out for Cinderella. And she's so kind to them. So it's just very, very sweet, honestly. It's a very sweet friendship in that case. And it's just terrible how awful the stepmother in particular is to Cinderella. And when I was looking up just other things about Cinderella, and this movie in particular, I didn't know that Anastasia in particular is voiced by Lucille Bliss, who voiced Smurfette in the 1980s the Smurfs cartoons, but also, notably to me, she voiced Miss Bitters on Invader Zim. Always gotta do that. So that's really cool. That's awesome. Because looking at that too, that reminds me that the woman who voiced Lady Tremaine, she also voiced, her name is Eleanor Audley. She voiced the Queen of Hearts in Alice in Wonderland, and she voiced Maleficent in Disney's Sleeping Beauty. So all of those kind of similar evil characters, really. And Alice in Wonderland, by the way, that's my sister's favorite Disney movie, and she loved that movie as a kid. And I don't know if I'm personally not such a big fan of that movie, just not to go off on a tangent, but just quickly, that I'm not a fan of it because everyone honestly is a jerk to Alice in that movie. And I know the whole thing is a dream and whatever, she learns her lesson from it, but everyone's a jerk except really maybe the Mad Hatter. I don't know, it's just kind of, even the Cheshire Cat's kind of it's just so, the characters, it's just so off-putting. It's an interesting world, clever and everything, but I never liked that. Poor Alice when she's crying and stuff. But it's a fun movie, obviously, her shrinking and growing like a giant, and the door with her tears. And my sister always loved the part with the caterpillar, who are you? She loves that part. And the whole scene with the flowers. But that queen, oh gosh. So, what's funny is that my friend and I, years ago, we saw Lion King on Broadway together. And then afterwards, we were talking about favorite Disney movies. And I told her my favorite is Aladdin. And then she said, well, I actually don't really have a favorite Disney movie. I have favorite parts of Disney movies. And then she said, for example, in Cinderella, my favorite part is when Cinderella is singing Sweet Nightingale. And then you just see her reflection in the bubbles with all of the colors. So that part's just really beautiful too. And I just can't stand Lucifer. God, making things all the more difficult for Cinderella. And you see Lucifer is evil because look at his owner, and the bratty stepsisters. And what's so funny is that when they were doing their quote unquote music lesson and Drizella was singing, I literally went, ugh, I was just in such disgust. It's just so funny. But then you hear Cinderella singing beautifully. And then it was just funny, though, to me. It was funny when the stepmother, Lady Tremaine, when she says, girls, above all else, self-control. And then there's a knock at the door. Yes! It was just so funny to me. Gosh. And so then, of course, they are invited to the royal ball. And poor Cinderella, she's like, oh, if you get all your chores done and if you could find something to wear. And then they're saying, oh, mother, do you realize what you've done? Yes, I said, if. Oh, if. Ugh, make me cringe, terrible. And I forgot poor Cinderella when she says, oh, this dress, it belongs to my mother. That makes it all the more devastating when they destroy. Oh my God, ugh, that part's so upsetting. But it's just so sweet that, because kindness is rewarded, that they give her more chores to do, of course, but then her little animal friends help her. Jack is so cute. Jack and Gus Gus. That's kind of, I guess they just stretched it out to make it more feature length. The whole part with them, her feeding all the animals, and then the part back and forth. Kind of like a Tom and Jerry-esque thing when Jack is distracting Lucifer, so then Gus can get the food, like the other mice can get the food, and then Gus keeps like wanting the one kernel. As a little kid, I thought it was like little pieces of cheese. I remember that. And like that was so infuriating a little bit. It's like, come on, Gus, you don't need like the one more piece. Goodness. And it's just funny how they decide with the tails, and then Jack has his own tail. Like, oh, he's so cute. Rucifer mean. Like the way he talks, so adorable. Oh gosh, like, oh, Gus. Like, oh my god. And Cinderella. Like, Cinderella. That song's so cute too. Oh my gosh. Anything like with just like little animals, I always loved as a kid. So when they help Cinderella and make her dress, and so I love that whole sequence as a kid, seeing the trimming, like them with the bows and cutting the lace. It's so cute. Okay, 1, 2, 3, like cutting everything. It's so adorable. Oh my gosh. And the birdies. And then that reminds me of Parks and Recreation when Leslie Knope and Ben Wyatt are going to get married. And then Leslie says, like, they're trying to like kind of rush through it and just do like an impromptu wedding because they can't wait. They just want to get married right then and there. And oh god, I love Ben and Leslie. Such like an adorable couple that are just so perfect for each other. But when Leslie says, oh, how did Cinderella finish her gown in time for the ball? Oh, right, birds and mice. That's right. So, oh gosh. And obviously Cinderella, like this story has such a huge place in pop culture. And even going back to just to mention other retellings of it, there's, for instance, a Cinderella story starring Hilary Duff and Chad Michael Murray, which I remember that movie specifically when they're dancing and like she has a mask on, so he doesn't know who she is because she has a mask, of course. And even, of course, the whole thing with how the spell breaks at midnight, and they poke fun at that in Shrek 2. Midnight? Why is it always midnight, you know? But it's just devastating. Like, she gets her dress right. It's like, oh, don't you love it? And then, like, you know, disgusting. It's like, oh, that part, honestly, is kind of terrifying. When she says, I'm not one to go back on my word. And then you see the sheer terror, honestly, in Cinderella's eyes. And then it's like, oh, you stole my beads. That's my sass. They destroy it. They destroy her dress. It's so devastating, and it reminds me of like devastating moments in other Disney movies. It's called like the all is lost moment, where it seems like all hope is lost, and it's like the really low point for the character. So in The Little Mermaid, for example, you know, I've mentioned it, it's my least favorite part when her father destroys all her stuff because he thinks he's protecting her, and then it's just so horrible. Oh gosh. But anyway, so then poor Cinderella crying, and then her fairy godmother shows up. And you know, actually, I kind of forgot that the fairy godmother's only in that one scene. I thought she had more, I don't know, I thought she showed up again at the end, but I misremembered that, obviously, that she's only really in that one scene. And she says, oh, you know, you still have faith, otherwise I wouldn't be here. And so it's just so cute. She makes the mice into the horses, and the horse into the chariot guy, like whatever, to drive the chariot, the pumpkin, you know, it's like, oh, you need a pumpkin. Of course you need a pumpkin. Turns the pumpkin into a carriage. It's all iconic. And Bruno's so adorable too. Turns Bruno into a human also. And then she's like, oh, you can't go in that. Like Cinderella's waiting for her to change her dress, and that's so iconic too. It's bippity boppity boo. That song too, that's actually like stuck in my head of all the songs right now, rewatching this. Bippity boppity boo. Because, you know, nonsense words for little kids love nonsense, silly words. That's like a big part even when I'm learning about in writing picture books, in fact. So that's why. So just like the nonsense, silly words, and like they just make no sense at all, but bippity boppity boo. So that's a fun little song. And it's just so beautiful. So then she's able to go to the ball. And it's just so weird too, like with the king saying, oh, like my son must marry. And then, of course, the son's not interested in any of the people there. And then it's just so funny with, I forgot this too, like the Duke, when he's like, oh, and then suddenly he looks up and he sees someone that he didn't see before and saying, oh, he must go to, he's drawn to her. Like he's explaining what's happening in real time. I liked that. That's clever. And, you know, the classic love at first sight moment. And I think this is an underrated song in this movie when they're dancing together and then she's singing, so this is love. Mm-hmm. Like, it's so beautiful. So this is what makes life divine. It's a lovely song. It's just like so romantic and lovely. And when they're just staring into each other's eyes, already madly in love, you know, with the prince. And she doesn't even, I forgot, she didn't even know he was the prince. She's like, oh, I didn't even meet the prince. He's like, well, don't you know? And then, of course, stroke of midnight, she runs off, leaves her glass slipper behind. You know, that's interesting too, that as they're rushing out, then everything changes back. But then why did the glass slippers remain? I don't really understand that, for the sake of the story, obviously, but that's just interesting that only the glass slippers remained. Everything else went back to normal. And so then she's got like the whole love-sick look to her, and then Lady Tremaine realizes when the next day that, oh, there's still a chance for you to, become his bride. And then she sees Cinderella all like just in her love-sick haze, and then like another terrifying moment when she just narrows her eyes and it gets all dark, and she locks Cinderella up in her bedroom. And that whole part with the key and the mice trying to get it back for her. And, oh gosh, when she's gripping it and then patting it, and Jack is in there. And then Lucifer, I can't stand Lucifer again. And then she's like, get Bruno. So Bruno saves the day. I love that. And, the part with the stepsisters trying on the slipper and their huge feet. It's like, oh, see, it's a perfect fit. And then it barely fits. So, oh gosh, screw them, God, like, ugh. Stepmother too, when she trips the guy and then the glass slipper breaks and she says, oh, but you see, I have the other slipper and it's so perfect. Then they get married, just like that, whatever, but just for the sake of the story, which is so sweet. So she just has her happy ending. It's so lovely, and the mice are cheering her on. Oh, so it's so beautiful and so sweet, of course. But personally, now watching this, I kind of wanted to see just kind of a small scene after the fact of the stepsisters and stepmother struggling on their own now, like trying to maybe do their own laundry, and then the two of them fighting, just kind of a scene like that, and just like, like the stepmom yelling at them or something, just them all totally miserable as they deserve because they're such terrible people for the way they treated Cinderella just out of jealousy. So, and then, just they're happily ever after, and that's good for Cinderella and the prince, but it's just one of those like super quick falling in love, get married things, just like in The Little Mermaid too, so, but it's sweet. And again, love the music and the songs. And I know then there was Cinderella 2. I think I saw some of it. I don't even remember what it's about, though. And Cinderella 3, which I think one of them focuses on Anastasia, if I remember correctly. I don't know. And then I know they had, of course, in Wreck-It Ralph 2, they had the whole thing with all of the princesses teaming up, and they do the whole thing with oh, do you think a big strong man can save you? It's can you talk to animals? Making fun of all of those tropes. And they did make fun of that, actually. They poked fun at it I did finally see Frozen, by the way. I saw it with my sister, and that's funny how they make fun of it with Anna and the prince. They just fall in love like that and they want to get married. So, I think that's clever that all of these years later they poke fun at that trope. So she never gave up hope is what it goes back to. She always had her dream in her heart, and then it came true. So it's just so lovely. And the glass slippers, that's so iconic too. So I just love all that with Cinderella with the beautiful gown. And even that too with them dancing, that reminds me then of the scene in Beauty and the Beast with Belle and the Beast dancing. So, and that too with her iconic yellow dress. And I will say there's so many parodies, of course, of Cinderella. And my favorite, honestly, and maybe because it's just fresh on my mind since I just watched it the other day with my sister, but my favorite parody of it right now is I brought up this anime. It's my all-time favorite anime, Fruits Basket. So not to go off too much on a tangent, but I will say, though, I will be discussing Fruits Basket eventually, but it's in its final season now, so I figured to just wait until the series is over before discussing it, and I'm just so excited. I love this anime so much, so stay tuned for that. But anyway, so we were catching up on the later episodes of Season 2, because now it's already in the final season, in Season 3, so we were finishing up the last few episodes, and they do a play they do Cinderella, and they call it Cinderella-ish because they go so off script, and it's just so hilarious because you should watch Fruits Basket if you haven't seen it, because I love Fruits Basket so much, and you'll love it too. But if you have seen it, you already know. So, they're hilariously miscast, except for, I would say, Yuki as the fairy godparent is perfect, I would say. But then we have Toru as the evil stepsister. She actually is way similar to Cinderella, in fact, being so kind and gentle and sweet. And then Hana, one of her best friends, is Cinderella, and she's so not like Cinderella at all. And then Kyo, my favorite character, I love Kyo, oh my god, he is cast as the prince, and he's nothing like the prince, so it's just so hilarious, though, and basically he does it for Toru, because he's in love with Toru, but oh God, I love those two. I'm sorry I'm going off on a tangent. I just am so excited to talk about that anime. But anyway, it's just so hilarious because like they go off script and he's like, hey, goth girl, dance with me right now. No, like, and then she's, oh, I know, you just want to marry my stepsister. It's just like becomes so real. And then also Toru's other friend, Arisa Uetani, she just has a moment where she's just like, why can't, like, she just has her moment too where she's crying out for the man she loves too. And it's just so hilarious. And like, oh my God, it's hysterical. The entire thing. That was just such a funny sequence of the whole anime. So that I would just say is my favorite parody version of Cinderella. And it's just so funny that I remember at the time, like with the manga, it's in volume 15 of the manga, and I remember at the time as a teen reading it thinking, oh, like this is kind of like fan fiction, like they're doing Cinderella and they're all hilariously miscast and they're going off script, and like Kyo is the prince and like, oh my gosh, and Toru is the evil stepsister. But then they have a moment too where it gets very real with, I'm sorry I'm going so much on Fruits Basket, but if you're familiar with it, that he's going to be locked up after high school, and then he's saying, well, like when he's just talking like it's himself, like they're not even like staying to the script, and then he says, well, it'll be better for everyone, and like just I won't cause trouble for anyone. And then Toru says, no, I don't want that, and then he's like surprised. And oh my gosh, it's just great. But it's so funny, like with the slipper, he's like, oh well, I guess that's it. Like he doesn't even care. But okay, so anyway, thank you for indulging me for listening to my little Fruits Basket tangent, because God, I love that anime. So anyway, just I love Cinderella though. I love the little mice and that the animals are her true friends. They look out for her. It's just so sweet. And that Cinderella gets her happily ever after. It's just so adorable and wonderful. And a dream is a wish your heart makes, no matter how your heart is grieving. If you keep on believing, the dream that you wish will come true. And with that, that's going to conclude this week's episode of Storytelling Saga. Be sure to visit storytellingsaga.com, follow on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and feel free to send me any questions, comments, or writing prompts by emailing me at storytellingsaga@gmail.com. Next week, Stella! I will be discussing A Streetcar Named Desire. Until then, thank you for listening, and remember, write what you love.